Was it ever asked of Pena or Altuve or the center fielder, who also have a PitchCom device, what pitch was called in the infamous Framber Valdez César Salazar incident?
It was not, and maybe that's a dereliction of duty on our part. To be completely honest with you, I don't know who specifically on the field wears PitchCom devices for the Astros. I know at one point Pena was. I know at one point they had the third baseman wearing it, depending on who it was. Altuve, I think Altuve DH'd that game, so he wouldn't have been in the field with it on. But no, that was not asked of the guys. It's a good thought, and it's something we probably should have thought of. But, I mean, to kind of peel the curtain back a little bit, I mean, we walked in that clubhouse, and the first thing we saw was, Framber and César Salazar having a discussion at Salazar's locker. And then bench coach Omar Lopez came in and escorted both of them into the manager's office. So we were a little bit preoccupied, just kind of watching that unfold and to kind of see what was going on next, to maybe think that far ahead. And to be honest with you, Eric, we didn't know what their stories were going to be coming out. So when we walked in, we really couldn't have the wherewithal to think, all right, let's go hear what was called and what wasn't called, because we didn't get all those details until Framber and César Salazar spoke to us afterward. And by that point, the clubhouse had pretty much cleared out, and the players, no real players there to talk to anymore.
Correa had a PitchCom. I mean, there's no way Correa doesn't play shortstop without knowing what's coming. He likes to be in control of almost everything. So, you know that he had the PitchCom. The thing for me is, you mentioned when you walked in there that they were talking, but there's now reports coming out that the players on the Astros weren't happy, and they made Framber go over and talk to him. Has anyone figured out the chain of events there? And then they went in Joe Espada's office, and then they all came out with kind of the same story. Oh, I would never do that, blah, 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 whatever, Framber. And his agents got doing the PR tour saying this is ridiculous. But has anyone ever – is that true, first of all, that the players on the Astros went to Framber and said, hey, you need to apologize and you need to act better towards Salazar? And then do we know what Joe Espada said to him other than what he said in his press conference yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to pretend like I was in the room and I know exactly what happened. I can say that there were some frustrations. There were some frustrations in there. I don't know to what level it rose. I don't know the chain of command of who apologized when. Was there a forced apology? I don't know. So I don't want to speak out of turn. All I can know is Framber Valdez told us after the game that he apologized to César Salazar both in the dugout after the fifth inning and after the game. That is what he told us. We asked César Salazar if he felt an apology was required, and he kind of said no, he didn't, and just kind of reiterated how good of a relationship that he's built with Framber and how well they work together. I wasn't in there, so I'm not going to try to put words in people's mouth or figure out what was and what didn't happen. There was some frustration. Don't get me wrong. I do know that, but I can't give you a blow-by-blow of who apologized when. Was it a forced apology? Was it made? All I can tell you is what the people told us on the record. And Framber Valdez told us that he apologized twice to César Salazar on Tuesday.
The dynamic of that clubhouse. Who would be the guy, if you were to guess, because Correa just got back, I know he has a lot of clout there, who would be the guy that would get up in Framber's face or maybe make sure we hey, we're addressing this. This isn't going to just get swept under the rug. I feel like it kind of has been.
I mean, we've got video evidence of Carlos Correa getting in Framber Valdez's face in the 2020 ALCS at Petco Park in Tampa. So Framber and Correa do have history, even though Correa just got back here a month ago. Correa is probably that guy, the guy that's going to be the one to take hold here. Don't discount Jose Altuve either. I know he's a quiet guy. I know he's a guy that usually doesn't love the spotlight, doesn't love being the focus of things, but he's a leader in there, and he'll speak up when he has to. He probably will never do it publicly. He'll never do it when the cameras are on, and he'll never tell anyone that he did that, but he is capable of doing that. So it'd be those two guys. And then, Joe Espada had a playbook for this, and he had to use this playbook a couple of months ago when Framber Valdez openly questioned the Astros' defensive positioning after his start against the Nationals. Framber made his comments that night, And then they kind of set off a firestorm. We talked to Framber that night after we talked to Joe Espada, so we didn't have a chance to ask Joe Espada about it. The next day, Joe Espada opened his pregame news conference with a statement similar to the one he said yesterday, similar to the one he gave yesterday, and then basically said, this is it. I'm not taking any more questions. I'm not talking about it anymore. Yesterday, he was asked a couple of follow-up questions, and I mean, he gave answers, but didn't really answer the question. Like, he responded to them, but the answers were not. He didn't, divulge anything else. So they were clearly on that playbook of let's address it once pregame on Wednesday, and then, as Joe Espada said, put it behind us. And they seem to do that. They went out and beat the Yankees 8-7. And like I said on Crush City Territory this morning, the thing I love about baseball is that the news cycle just constantly moves, right? Like, this isn't football where you have to wait 6 days for another game. This isn't basketball where there could be a day or two between games and the news cycle can drag on. Like, the quickest way to put it behind you is go out and play the next day. Go out and play, go out and win. And the Astros took a good step toward that on Wednesday, kind of distancing themselves from all this, from this hoopla.
Chandler, do you think this is something that lingers around? I know you're saying they're trying to distance themselves from it. Is it pretty obvious to say that Salazar won't catch Framber next time he pitches? And then also, is this something that in the clubhouse and going forward with the Astros, I'm not even talking about maybe this year, but when he's a free agent, the Astros look at it and say, because this isn't, listen, as good of a pitcher as Framber Valdez is, this isn't his first thing where people have said, what the heck is he doing? And he's kind of done some stuff, right? So do you think going forward, this is something the Astros look at in free agency and say, maybe we'd rather have somebody else here, even though they know Framber very well?
Well, the Astros probably aren't bringing Framber Valdez back, but it's not because of anything you just said. It's because they're not going to give him the sort of contract that his market value says he's worth and that he will command on the free agent market. He's a year older than Max Fried, but has very similar career numbers, if not better in some regards to Max Fried. So you look at 8 for 218 that Max Fried got. I'm not saying Framber Valdez is going to get that exact deal, but that will be the framework that, perhaps is a starting point. And the Astros have never guaranteed a player more than $151 million, much less a pitcher. Jim Crane, the one thing in his ownership tenure, he has not given massive deals to starting pitchers. Lance McCullers got a 5-year, $85 million extension before he went to free agency. Josh Hader got a $95 million deal as a closer. $95 million is the most they've ever guaranteed to a pitcher in Jim Crane's ownership tenure. So the Astros probably aren't bringing Valdez back, but that's more of a money thing. That's more of like that. He is going to want a contract that they just don't give. As far as what it's going to do for the next month and a half, Victor Caratini is back off of the IL, off the concussion IL. So the Astros have 3 catchers on their roster right now. I don't know who's going to catch Framber in his next start. I'd be surprised if it was César Salazar for no other reason than, I think Victor Caratini and Yainer Diaz are better options to catch just from an offensive upside. This is a team that needs to score runs. This is a team that is looking to upgrade its offense in any way possible. Those 2 guys are just better offensively. You have to remember the reason César Salazar caught Framber Valdez on Tuesday was because Victor Caratini was still on the concussion IL and they needed Yainer Diaz to DH because, if I'm remembering the days right, I think Yordan Alvarez was off. So whatever. Salazar caught Valdez because they were in a little bit of a pinch, just roster-wise. They're not in that anymore. So I'd imagine one of Caratini or Diaz catches Valdez in his next start. And then with Framber specifically, and I've reiterated this on Crush City Territory, they know how to handle him. Like, this isn't a new guy that's come in and is just been like this. Like, they've had Framber around for going on 7 years now. Like, they have seen him evolve. They know how to get the most out of him. Sometimes things like this happen. They've had instances like this where some stuff has occurred and they've been able to manage it. They've been able to handle it. I don't think it's going to be that as big of a deal maybe as most think, just because they're so experienced with this. Like, they kind of know how he is. They know what makes him tick. They understand kind of how to how to handle him in the clubhouse. So I think they'll be able to be fine with it for the next month and a half. But as far as the future goes, like I never thought Framber Valdez was coming back to Houston when the season began, and nothing that happened Tuesday night changes my thought on that. And it has nothing to do with the cross up or the fail to step off.
FT fam, designer clothes can be expensive, but we want our clothes to look good. We want to feel good. We want them to be affordable. And Kratz, if you tell me that I can wear a t-shirt that looks like it's tailored, but it's not actually tailored, and it just comes that way, then sign me up for True Classic.
Have to. You got to sign up for it because these shirts are soft, they're thin, they're durable, and they're very versatile. You can wear them to the gym. You can wear them out to a nice dinner. Let's get after it because these shirts are the real deal.
They are. Check it out. I've got one of the performance ones. It's a nice blue, fits well. I can go to the gym. I can go out. I can do FT in a shirt like this. FT fam, there's a reason why True Classic has sold over 25 million shirts to more than 5 million customers, and they are racking up over 200,000 5-star reviews. See for yourself with our exclusive link at trueclassic.com/foul to save. That's trueclassic.com/FOUL. Chandler, I'm going to take us to the lineup. How much better does it look with Yordan Alvarez back and looking mostly like himself? And then I saw you writing about Isaac Paredes. So is there a chance?
Let's start with Isaac Paredes. I don't think anyone knows if there's a chance. He got cleared to start baseball activities on Wednesday, yesterday. If you watched him at Dyken Park while he was taking ground balls and while he was running, he is nowhere near full speed. Not that I expected him to be full speed, but this was very light baseball activities. Like I'm talking, he fielded 5 grounders that didn't really require him going side to side. He did some running in the outfield that he said was about 50%. He is not close to coming back. So, but they are going to send him to West Palm Beach this week to continue his rehab. He'll be down there. Isaac said that he's still not sure if he's going to play this season. He's going to try his best, but it's still very much up in the air. I think the bigger question is, if everything goes well, and let's say he is available for a potential playoff spot on a roster, like he's obviously going to have to DH a little bit. He's going to have to probably DH primarily because I don't know by that time if he'll be in good enough shape to play a 9-inning game defensively. I also don't know where he would play defensively, considering Carlos Correa is on the team and now plays third base. They're rotating Ramon Urias and Mauricio Dubon and Jose Altuve at second. They could play Paredes at second and have left field for either Yordan or Altuve. But if he comes back in a DH role, that would force both Alvarez and Altuve to play defense every day. Whether the Astros would be okay with that trade-off, this is a team that misses Paredes' plate discipline. They miss how many pitches he sees. Like he would be a massive addition to this lineup. So I think they'd take the trade-off. But again, this is really far off. Like I think it is still very much up in the air if Paredes, plays again this season. But it's still a good sign to see him doing baseball activities after he faced the possibility of undergoing surgery that would have sidelined him for 6 months. So that's a win in and of itself that he's back to do baseball activities. And then Yordan, I mean, it changes the complete dynamic of the lineup. And we said this, and we kind of Joe Espada had reiterated this before Yordan came back. Even if he came back at less than full Yordan, even if he came back at a little bit less efficacy, just his presence and just the fear he strikes in opponents is going to change how opposing managers and opposing pitchers navigate them. His first series back against the Rockies, I think he walked 5 times, and the Rockies, like, they weren't even trying to hide it. Like they were pitching around him, and he hadn't played a major league game. He had missed 100 games, and they were pitching around him, and you could already tell it was a different sort of presence. Now, last night would lead me to believe that he's all the way back. He hit 5 balls last night, all 103.5 or harder off the bat, was spraying the ball to all fields. Josh Reddick was marveling earlier this morning about him, going with a Luke Weaver changeup into left field for a game-tying single to the other way. He pulled the ball. He went up the middle. He is, when he's on, he's a top 5 hitter in baseball. And, adding that can only help this lineup that, has had its struggles with runners in scoring position, that has not been able to have the run production we think it could have. But I mean, adding Alvarez in there just changes the calculus entirely.
He's one of the guys. The only chance the league has against him is if he gets called up to the next league, which I don't think they've created that yet. But he's one of those guys. Last question: we haven't hit on this bullpen, and I'm not saying this because Abreu actually had a blip last night. He's ridiculous. Does this bullpen have enough length? Does it have enough just inning to inning skill to succeed in the playoffs?
I mean, I think it could, and I also think you're going to see starters go into the bullpen in the playoffs, just like we see, every year. So I think that the complexion of this bullpen could look a lot different in the playoffs. One thing we didn't hit on is that Spencer Arrighetti went on the IL yesterday with elbow inflammation. That would have been maybe my pick as the guy that would have translated best to the bullpen in a playoff scenario. I'm not sure they want to risk that with Javier and Garcia, two guys that have just come off long arm surgery recoveries. I'm not sure they want to risk putting them in the bullpen that quick. Arrighetti only, broke his thumb. That's why he missed so much time. So to me, he profiled as the guy that would have been the obvious kind of swing man, guy that could give you some length, or guy that the stuff could play up out of the bullpen. Without him, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, but, I think they've got some good pieces. Brian King is a guy that as a left-handed pitcher, has been dominant against right-handed batters, so they can use him kind of regardless of platoon splits. They've got Aniel De Los Santos, who's been very good for them since they, got him from the Braves. Caleb Ort has pitched some leverage innings and succeeded, pitched very well last night. And then they have all the confidence in the world in Brian Abreu. I know the blip last night wasn't great, the homer to Bellinger, but he is, by most statistical measures, he's been as good, if not better, in some categories than Josh Hader this year. So when they give him the ball in the ninth inning, they're not worried. I think it's just the bridge to get to Abreu. I think that's going to be a little bit interesting, and I think it's going to test Joe Espada's kind of managerial, kind of how he's going to match guys up, how quickly he goes to his bullpen, or quite frankly, how long he sticks with his starters, because maybe his starters can give him, maybe he's got a little more confidence in the upside of the starters than he would going to the bullpen in maybe the fourth or the fifth inning.